Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome. Many of us build significant parts of your careers, even our identities within walls of certain companies, and these change over time. How do we navigate the transition, move forward with our lessons, and then redefine ourselves for what next? Right? Today, we have the privilege of exploring these questions with Lianne. Lianne has had an incredible journey, starting up with giants like IBM and Google before leading an impactful decade at Meta. During her 10 plus years, she was not just in one role, but she shaped diverse areas from SMB growth to creative programs, and then also lastly tackling complex monetization challenges. Um, Lianne is here now applying her expertise as senior leader in the field of AI and channeling her passion for the community here in Singapore. So, Lianne, very warm welcome to you. We are thrilled to have you here. To start off this conversation beyond your impressive career path, um, do help us dive into the various layers of your journey. Tell us who Lianne is today. How would you describe yourself beyond your title, the roles that you've played, and even beyond your resume?
Well, first of all, good morning, Anand, and to everyone who has joined us today. That's a very loaded question, Anand. It's like, who are you today beyond your title? Because we tend to really marry a lot of our identity into what we do. A very existentialist question before my second cup of coffee. So, I would say so. Before I get into my actual journey, I would say where I am in my life and in my career today is that if I were to describe it is I'm really being pushed out of my comfort zone. And that's a good thing, right? I am taking on this new job, had a new promotion. I don't have a helper. I have two kids. I have one dog. I have many plants that I let Mother Nature take care of. And so don't even ask me about balance because it doesn't exist. It's all about making intentional choices every day. So that's sort of where I am right now. And then I really, I really love this description. So I used to have a colleague, he's Japanese, and on his LinkedIn he wrote, he is a shape-shifting amoeba. And that's definitely how I feel right now. You know, it's just like shifting and shaping yourself into a form, whatever the problem calls for. And yeah, shape-shifting amoeba. This is going to be the takeaway for everybody. It's a good thing.
That is one of the funniest thing yet. One of the shrewdest thing I've heard in a really long time. Um, no, I know you say you're a shape-shifting amoeba, but you've held on to a lot of your shapes for a really long time, right? Um, help me understand, help the viewers understand a little more about the journey that you have taken, uh, right? Of course, I touched on some of the highlights, but please share from your perspective, what are the key milestones that you've crossed? What are the turning points? Where are the pivots that has really shaped your current path?
Okay. So I like to tell my career journey as if I was a startup going for funding. Okay, so let's go for Series A. Series A is for the Asian financial crisis. So when I graduated from university, I was in the thick of the Asian financial crisis. Pretty much feels like what we're encountering today. So this is definitely deja vu. And because it's A, there are no jobs, and A means I am willing to do anything to start revenue generating revenue, right? I was out of school. I wanted to prove myself. It was very hard, and there were not a lot of options, at least for the degree that I had, and so I took on a call center job. That's my hustle, and I worked for American Express, and this is what it took for me to gain that initial knowledge that I have from work. And then Series B is my break into the big tech. So B is for big tech. This is where I managed to get a job at IBM. And then I moved to Google. because I saw a job ad on monster.com, and I'm definitely dating myself. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this was pre-LinkedIn. LinkedIn did not exist. It was not a platform available to us. So it was pretty much a job classified online. I clicked on that role and I said, you know what, screw it. I have nothing to lose. I'm going to apply. And I just gave it my best shot. And no one has heard of AdWords back in the day. Okay, so I know there are a bunch of people here who are also former Googlers. Google is pretty much this empty website, and no one understood how they monetize their services. So I applied, and this is what got me to Singapore in 2007. I've been living here since then. And I would say, so Google was 4 years, and B is also for business school. That was somewhere in between Google and Meta. I took a break. I went to Spain, and I studied. I studied there for about a year and a half. I thought I was gonna be settled in Europe, but then Meta came along. So someone that I used to work with at Google offered me this opportunity. So I packed all my bags with my husband, and then we moved back here. And this is the start of a 10-year journey at Meta. So Series C is really where I am right now. This C is for Catalyst. So I got laid off in the second or third round. That was in May 2023. I knew it was coming. You know, after a decade, I think it's dangerous to stay too long at a certain place. My biggest fear, I would say, is getting institutionalized, that you are so comfortable in one place that you're not growing anymore. And pretty much sort of just not make yourself available for the next opportunity just because of that comfort zone. You know, you're not being pushed to test boundaries and grow. So I would say Series C is really the catalyst. This was a really good thing that happened to me. I was very fortunate to have found this role at TDCX, and I can talk more about that later as to how I found the opportunity. I think a lot of people are interested, you know, how did you land something so fast? And then I would say Series D is, I don't know. Don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully something good. Series E is definitely, hopefully, early retirement. This is the dream. No F, no G, no J's, no. E is like early retirement, right, Anna? This is what we want.
That is indeed the dream, Lianne. That is indeed the dream. I love how you kind of um, converted this into an analogy that hopefully a lot of people can understand, but one certainly that I am very much um, drawn by. Before we get into the how did you land certain jobs, which is going to be an important part of the conversation, I actually want to go back to the part where you were talking about um, ho- um, like life basically looking like being very comfortable, and you didn't want to get institutionalized. Um, tell us a little more about that. Um, in a place like Meta, where you spent practically the major part of your career, how did you come into that being that state of, oh, I'm comfortable and institutionalized here? Did it feel like you were having to prove yourself every day? Or did it get so comfortable that you lost the attraction to like put out your best work? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I think there are signals, and you know, you can recognize us in ourselves. We can recognize some of those signals. For me, the signal is that when I get easily triggered, and my husband articulated it very clearly for me. So, you know, I went through all these rants, and I was very unhappy, and he would just say, you know what, sounds like you're bored. And I realized that at least at my time at Meta, I hit 3-year learning curve. So if you look at my sort of my movement pattern, I tend to move after about 2 to 3 years, because the first year is really getting a handle of the job. And then once you get comfortable, you know, second year is you're really, really good at it. And then by the third year, you're like, you know what, I can do this with my eyes closed. Only because the pace at Meta is very different. Uh, and this is where, you know, after 3 years, I'm always actively looking. Even internally, I was very much, I don't sit in my console or in my desk and just ignore everybody. I make it a point to find people I don't know, attend those internal events. And so when I think about it, I didn't understand. I didn't have a word to this activity that I was doing until in hindsight, I realized, okay, what I was doing is active planning. I didn't understand that this is what it was. It was just very organic to me that I treated myself as a growth stock. So the moment that you feel that you are not, this job, whatever it is that you're doing right now, is not adding value to you, you're not a growth stock anymore, you're sort of stagnating, then it's a signal that maybe it's time to move. You know, regardless of the job, regardless of the company, you need to treat yourself like a growth stock. And I love this concept. I read it from a book called Career Forward. And that is such a beautiful analogy. We're right, you know, it's all about, we need to look out for ourselves. You know, no one's going to build the tomorrow except for you. And this is sort of like how I navigated my journey there. Whenever I feel that inkling of boredom, also every year I make it a point to do something new. So the last thing before I was laid off of Meta, the last thing that I did was actually took this MIT course. I highly recommend it. It's a data science machine learning, only because it really fits so well into my previous role in monetization analytics. And I did that, and you know, every year I do something like that. You know, one year it could be French. I'm not trying to copy Zuck, or maybe it was Zuck who copied me, you know, with all these challenges. But it's good. Again, when I feel that I am missing something and I start doing that, I think it's time that for me to explore something else.
And is that your recommendation for people as well, that they try something new? How would you um, work with somebody who is in your similar position, but maybe comes at life with a different perspective? What would you tell them?
I can't force, there's not one size that fits all. I think it comes from a place of self-awareness. At least if you don't know what you like, at least understand what you don't like. You know, if you hate numbers, then don't do that MIT course that I did. You will suffer. This is not for you. But at the same time, you know, research as to how your specific career path or your specific field is growing. Because as they said, right, like before there was like a 10-year cycle, you know, and then all of your skill sets and all the knowledge that you knew would become obsolete. And then now it's down to 5-year cycles. And guess what? It's going to be down to 3. And so this turnover of knowledge is just going to be so fast with the advent of technology. Um, I'm not a heavy Dune fan. I do love the sci-fi movies, but you know what I don't know. Anand, have you seen this the Dune movies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know the people there called the Bene Gesserit, right? They had their own show. I love what they said. You know, we don't hope, we plan. And that's sort of like, if you internalize that, you can't leave your fate, your career to destiny. You need to actively work on it. Like if you want something, then you need to be deliberate. Like, what are the steps? What are these little steps that I need to take for me to get there? So I'll tell you, just going back a couple of years in my career, when I was 25, my mini goal in life was like, I need to get out of my country. Only because I'm from the Philippines originally, by the way. Only because I felt a cap. You know, I felt that if I really want to play the A game, I cannot be here because I need to be in a place of growth, and I need to be in a place wherein, if I want to be in the NBA, I need to join the NBA, right? If I want to play with the A players, I need to be in the Premier Leagues. And so I explored every single opportunity. I'll tell you, I took the TOEFL, I took even though I had no job, I had no reason to. It was just me signaling to the universe, I'm gonna do every single step that it takes. I contacted agencies. So just finding different routes for me to be able to get out. And I got my lucky big break at Google, you know, just by clicking on that job classified ads. It's a combination of luck, I would say, active planning, and just being intentional with your actions.
Amazing. Coming back to your decade at Meta, right? Um, Clearly, your career there spanned various like verticals, even, right, from growth to creative to monetization, right? What really stood out for you as you look back on that chapter of your career?
Yeah, I guess there's no single thread. You know, when I think about why did I do what I did, there's no single thread except that I did it because I was building my toolbox. You know, I mean, the ambition. was to become a COO. And I understood that in order for you to do that, you need to have a good grasp of the business. You need to be exposed to as many departments as possible. And so for, if you notice, I started with SMB. This is the sales org. And then I moved to GBM, Global Business Marketing, and I moved to Creative Shop, and I moved to sales monetization strategy. And someone would come and look at my resume and it's like, what the hell was she doing? Like there's no common thread. I am not a specialist. So I realized, because specialization bores me. I cannot, I know I have so much respect for people who can concentrate on one discipline and go very, very deep. And that's a good path. But again, the way to be a shape-shifting amoeba, you can, you need to have breadth sometimes. This is the way I've crafted my career, and not necessarily depth. And there's merits to both. There's no one good way or the other. It's really just how you envision yourself and what you're good at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of coming towards the last pieces of your um, career at Meta, at least for now, right? Um, what was the hardest thing you had to walk away from? You clearly indicate that you knew this was coming along. You knew that there was something happening in the air around you. So, what was the hardest thing?
The salary. I know people are going to say, oh, it's the people. No, no, no. Let's keep it real. The salary was, let's be honest. Meta is an outlier. Um, I'll just be very upfront, and I know that I hear the same from people. Like, really, a compensation was very generous. The benefits, that we lived in a golden era we're in, the big tech is truly the outlier. Definitely. Okay. Well, jokes aside, the people. I this is not. I don't do a lot of lip service. I really believe that the people at Meta and at Google, I would say, are really some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. And this is why, sometimes this is where imposter syndrome would kick in from time to time, because there's always this artificial pressure that you put in yourself to really keep up with your colleagues, because you're just blown away by their brilliance, right? And by the way, I know that speaking of brilliance, Jan LeCun was just at the Meta office. He was in Singapore, was very jealous, and I can tell you that. I've almost I met Vince Cerf in person, and I just almost wanted to come full circle in my geek career. So I was very upset. But that's the kind of caliber that they have, right? So definitely miss, aside from the perks, working with those very smart people. What's not hard to walk away from? Surprisingly, and don't get me wrong, it's some of the beautiful offices. At some point, they're beautiful, they're nice, they're wonderful spaces, but I'm working in sort of an environment that's not that. It's not that beautiful. We have a beautiful office, but it's not to that scale. I'm fine. I don't miss it. I don't miss coming to CBD at all. Yeah, I guess it was not that very hard to walk away from, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. The two things that I'm catching over here is, uh, or rather, even bringing up for myself, is the imposter syndrome and how much I don't miss it around some of the most talented people, and that's only because of the people, right? It's something that continued to push me while I was there. Um, Always wanted to figure out what was the best version I could come up. Many instances I would fall short, and I'm sure you felt that way as well. I don't know if you have, but I certainly did. And yeah, I think one of the easier things to kind of walk away from was um, the pride of being in a large organization. I think that's something that stood out
Yeah.
for me, is that, hey, no, it didn't matter. I needed to be doing uh, good work, work that I found pride in. And sometimes just being in a large organization was not it. And when I was younger, that was something that kind of came up. But anyway, I'm digressing. Kind of moving on, right? From your time at Meta, you've definitely spent so much time across different industries. You worked across various cultures. How has that shaped the way that you lead and connect with people today?
Um, I would say so. You're right. During my time at Meta, I did manage to lead global teams. When I started, I did manage a few people across different regions. I would say the number one thing is just you have to respect culture codes. You know, people are not going to adjust to you. You need to understand how to read the culture codes, and that cuts across relationship with your clients, your relationship with your team, and the relationship with the stakeholders. If you understand that, it just makes the job so much easier. The second thing is, I would say one of the hardest jobs at Meta is really to manage people. So if you were at Meta and you had the fortune, the privilege and the fortune of managing a bunch of people, you know that this kind of management is a very different flavor from whether if from the same type of role that you would do outside, right? Because the biggest learning that I have there was that you need to be the rising tide that lifts the entire boat. It's not just about you anymore. You need to be able to lift your entire team. And frankly, and I don't know if some folks from my previous team would be listening in, and they were just my biggest pride and joy. They were like my children. For me, my goal is not to keep them with my team or within my team. My goal is for them to succeed. And that's a very different mindset, from the traditional way of managing people. So that's definitely shaped me. That's one of my pivotal moments that really changed my philosophy about managing people and leadership. It's expanding your influence. How do you lift your team? How do you become that tide that lifts everyone up? Um, and that's a good thing because that's not a very common practice outside of the big tech. If you are, it really shapes your principles as a leader. So I'm very grateful for that.
Absolutely. I remember the days when you were constantly told as a lead to lead with heart and kind of find ways to get your team to be successful, and your success would basically practically follow. Uh, so you did touch upon earlier that you had to understand the culture of people. Um, for folks outside of the big tech, they look at big tech as its own culture, right? What would be your uh, approach to helping people kind of settle into new roles, into um, new spaces that they could find different now moving from big tech to some of these other places?
I would say the biggest trap that people fall into is the comparison trap. Like, don't do that because it's not the same. Don't look back, always move forward. And yes, it's good for us to reminisce the old times. We lived in the golden era of big tech, right? We were very fortunate to have been given that space and that opportunity. But it's not a productive use of your time, your energy. You have to work with what you have. Look, you can choose your heart, right? And if you are in a new space or in a new environment, keep an open mind. Your first job, and this is what I always tell most of the folks that I speak with, when you are entering a new job or a new organization, your only role is you can't be rejected as the new organ entering into a body, right? This organ rejection failure. This cannot happen to you because again it's never about you. You are the foreign object trying to enter this institution that has its own codes, its own language, its own culture. So it's up to you to adjust, because if you fail to do that, this is where people become very unhappy, only because they don't give it a fair chance. They always look back at the past, and this is a new world order, and all of us need to adapt. And this is really the growth moment. This is where it happens. You build some skill sets outside of what you already had before when you were at Meta. So yeah, the organ rejection failure syndrome is really something that I emphasize. Your first 90 days is to listen. Don't try to add that. Don't be the superhero. You're not part of the Avengers. This is not your job. Your job is to listen, to understand the culture code, and to build as many relationships as you need to, or as you want, because you need to find allies, right? Who's going to have your back in your first 90 days in the organization? So, but at the same time, this is where I would give conflicting advice. Be firm about your moral compass. Definitely, there will be some institutions who are not really aligned with your own principles and your own goals, right? And this is where I think deep in your heart, you listen to your gut. You know when it's time to walk away. I cannot tell you what those signals are because your value system is very different from mine. Your threshold is very different from mine. But if you have a solid ground, what are your non-negotiables? Put that on paper and go back. Is there a cognitive dissonance in where my value systems are and where the company is at the moment? Then maybe you don't need to wait that long and maybe there's a chance to walk away. But at the same time, like you gave it a fair shot. You tried. Give it a chance, I would say. It's just hard coming from big tech. We have a very different way of doing things. Some other companies will move a bit more slowly or a bit faster just because maybe it's a startup, like everyone needs to roll up their sleeves. So yeah, depending on who you are, what type of person you are, um, I would just say, yeah, your first job to entering into a new organization is not to be rejected as this new organ entering a foreign body.
Yeah, and you now spent a little over a year in your new role with Women in Tech. Yeah. What has been the most surprising um, realization for you moving into this new space after your 10 plus years at Meta and nearly a decade and a half in like big tech companies?
Yeah, I would say, let me talk about my current company because I haven't been in Women in Tech that long. So it's only been a couple of months for me. I'm reigniting the chapter. Um, Let me tackle just sort of like my new company first, and then I can go into some of the realizations with Women in Tech as well. So the first is that I was very fortunate. The company that I joined has a very similar cultural footprint as the big tech. They're agile, they're very startup-y. So I was kind of but I knew them from the past. This company was part of my existing network. So I had a feeling and I had a sense of how they operated. So very happy that, sometimes it doesn't have to be such a huge gap between where Meta was and where I am now. In terms of skill sets though, oh my God, Anna, it's I was unleashed. Let's just put it this way. I was unleashed. I'm not so sure. Depending on who you talk to, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. Someone unleashed.
I was just going to say
I'm
that.
gonna put her back in. It can be Thor, bad, evil woman, sister, unleashed,
Yeah.
or it can be a positive force. Net positive force like GPT. I don't know. So my point is that I realized, like, sadly, because in big tech, we are now part of this. We are a small little cog in this big machine, right? And so I felt like I was really not maximized to my fullest potential. It's a positive thing. When I joined this company, my God, I wore many different hats. I had to do things I've never done before. It was just very, truly exciting and very fulfilling because if I did not move, and that's why I'm saying catalyst, if I did not move, if I just stayed where I was, if I hadn't been laid off, I wouldn't have tapped into these capabilities that I knew that I was capable of doing, right? Like these new skill sets. So it was a very exciting time. Women in tech is a slightly different story. Maybe I'll find some other time to talk about that. But Singapore is not at all disadvantaged in terms of the progress when it comes to gender parity. Definitely one of the leading in countries, and we are, at least Singapore is very advanced when it comes to gender equity. Number one in Asia Pacific, number 8 in the world. So this is not a bad thing. However, the reality is that when I walked, being an AI, and as you would know, I would walk into boardrooms and I would still be one of 2 women, and the other one is the moderator, or the other one is the coordinator. I just feel very sad. However, I don't feel uncomfortable. I walk in there and I take the front seat just because I'm the only one here and I'm going to be heard and I'm going to be seen because I earned my seat at the table. The problem is that we need more people to get there. And this was, I came back from Osaka. We had a big discussion about that. Why are women not doing that? And I think not because they don't want to, it's just that the infrastructure, their support system is still not there to allow them to take on this full job. And this is where, I will give full credit to my husband as well. I wouldn't be where I am today if he is not this equal partner who allowed me to really rise and take on an expanded scope. He will be very happy to hear that. I'm scoring massive brownie points right now.
And I'm sure. And it looks like, Lianne, more than just the professional side of things, you're also having to learn a lot of things, like like what you said, be at a boardroom where most other people are not women in a way, and you just feeling comfortable, right? So I'm guessing that there's a bit of things that you've learned, unlearned as well, as a human, not just as a professional. So can you talk us through what that learning has been for you, and what are you currently learning to get um, one or two steps further ahead as well?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe just overall learning. I wrote it down just so I don't forget. I guess the first principle that I embrace is that be unapologetically ambitious. You know, you don't owe anyone anything, and no one owes you anything. It's just you crafting and charting your own path. And then related to that, if you want a better life, go build it. Pray as if it were up to the universe or up to God, or if you're religious, but work like it's up to me, because no one's going to help me except me. And then Eleanor Roosevelt, I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday. And this is why it's intentional. So right now in the fields, in terms of enrichment, I have an attention span problem from time to time. So I've been behind on my book reading. So I made a commitment. It takes a lot of effort. So Audibles is great. I can do that. It doesn't really, it doesn't put a lot of stress on my attention span, but it's also not good for me to resort to that, to find the easy way. So I've been reading a lot of books right now, some technical related. So if anyone is interested in AI, I am not plugging this, but I really, really, really love this author just because he has a very unbiased, non-promotional way of presenting information. So it's called the 100-Page Machine Learning book. It's by Andrei Barkov. He's on LinkedIn as well. I find him to be one of the most grounding voices in AI, like not about the hype, but just doing a good dose of reality check as to what AI is capable and not capable of doing. He has a second book called the 100-Page Large Language Model book, only because whether you're a beginner, I would say it's more for intermediate readers wherein you understand the math behind a lot of these models, but it's just very, very beautifully articulated, and it's just super simple that anyone can grasp, right? So that's from the AI side. And then there are other things that I need to learn, like as a person running a business. I love this book called, what is it called? I'm reading it right now. It's by Peter Schwartz, a Long View. I think it's called The Long View. Sorry. The Art of the Long View. There you go. So Peter Schwartz is a scenario planner. I'm starting to really love this idea of scenario planning. Again, goes back to my Bene Gesserit roots. Anna. we
Yeah.
don't we don't hope, we plan. But he is a consultant to governments. He was a consultant to Shell, and it's really imagining, not falling into this optimism bias, imagining different scenarios for yourself. And I think this is something that's useful. What if I get this job? What's the outcome? What if I don't? What's the outcome? So it just mentally prepares you to deal with any kind of scenario. And this happens in business a lot. So I really love that book. And yeah. So I've been reading a lot. I'm not actively taking any courses or learning just because I don't have that kind of time these days. But the way I enrich myself is through books these days. Again, it's to train my attention span as well. I blame social media. I became a goldfish. We are victims of our own product, Anand.
Yes, and why wouldn't we blame that now, in a way? Uh, but tell me, and I see actually, as you say these words and utter these statements over, there's a lot of pride in yourself. And it kind of is coming across, at least to me, that you love what you do, you love who you are right now. So, what are you most proud of, um, not professionally, but on a more personal side, in how you've navigated your journey so far?
I choose my hard. I think people find it crazy that I don't always pick the easy route. So I'll tell you what kinds of crazy hards that I've done. So aside from, having two kids, I don't have a helper taking on this role. There was also kind of hard wherein I was on maternity leave. I was learning French until 9 p.m. I don't have, uh, only because I felt like the juice is worth the squeeze. It's an investment. I'm very ROI mindset. And I think that's really what helped me focus. Now I cannot. When I was younger, I think on and I can multitask. When people ask me if I can multitask, maybe not as well, because it's not. It's a discipline that I built over time to allow me to focus. I think I'm more effective if I do focus blocks, right? So I had to change a lot over the years in the sense that I have to change a lot of these things that I was trained to do, but I have to undo just because it's not the most effective route. And in order for me to stay focused and to be able to prioritize my personal life and also my professional life, I exercise the F word, which is filters. I, no, I don't. I don't tell people. Yeah, I filter. So filters are very useful tools. So if I can, give this tool to anyone, filters are basically asking yourself, for instance, for me, is this activity revenue generating or not? Okay, if it's not a good use of my time. So by having this question, this filter question, you can easily cut up not a good use of my time, not a good use of my time. You know, um, for instance, here, why am I here? It is a good use of my time because this makes me happy. This is meaningful to me, being connected, giving back, and at least, doing my part to help someone out there navigate their journey because it's very hard. Sometimes you just need to hear how people have done it to get you going. That's meaningful. And this is a good use of my time, right? So, and then what can I automate as part of that workflow? So efficiency is a hardcore, hardly imprinted value in my system. So yeah.
And so you did touch upon making it meaningful for people coming up, listening to you, and kind of finding, hey, this is something that I could do, right? So, what is that you're going to tell someone who's standing at the edge of their next chapter, really unsure of what's going to come next?
Oh, okay. Three very related things, and I wrote it down just so I don't forget. Um, First of all, it's not as bad or as good as you think, which means the second thing is that the only thing that's holding you back between where you are right now and where you want to be is your fear. And most of that fear is in your mind. It's your body responding to a stimulus that is unknown. And then the third one, I think for those folks out there, you don't need more time. You need a deadline. It's not about, oh, I need more time to prepare. No, you need a deadline. Set a hard deadline because that sense of urgency is what's going to get you over that hump. So I know it's really, really hard. I can empathize with a lot of folks. I work so closely with some of those folks looking for new roles right now. I would say do not fall into, I love LinkedIn. It has its good purposes and whatnot. That abyss, that black hole of ghost job applications, it's just very, very dangerous and very mentally draining. And this is what I would say. Sometimes that 1 hour spent scrolling through LinkedIn is sometimes better spent, no matter how inefficient it may seem, to spend two half-an-hour coffees with people who can connect you with real opportunities. And I can tell you, there's a real story behind that. I have a personal connection, it's a friend. Been looking at opportunities for months, went to that whole cycle of, being in a bad spot, depression. We had a conversation and I said, I know someone from that company that you want to apply for. And that was like such a light bulb moment. And that person got the role. So you see, I think in this world we're in, there's just a lot of automation, a lot of ATS, a lot of these recruitment tools being put into place. You can't fight that. That's a battle that we cannot win. And where you can win is these personal connections who can vouch for you as a person, right? Who can give you a referral, this kinds of stuff. And that's why, yeah, I think give yourself a deadline, give yourself goals, mini goals. I'm going to meet 4 people today. The rejection aspect is very hard. If you reach out to someone, but again, it's not as bad as good as you or as good as you think. What's the worst that can happen? They don't reply, and then you move on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm forced to recall one thing that happened to me. I was down that same path, applying for probably a million jobs. Okay, maybe not, but you get it. And my co-founder today reached up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do something together?" And that completely changed the way that I looked at how my path would go forward. So I wanted to kind of add on to what you've just said over there is real people, real connections actually probably open up much better outcomes than the cesspool of ghost jobs, like you pointed out, are there. So that's a fascinating one realization for myself, and hopefully wise words for somebody kind of listening in as well. On that very note, like assuming that this is the starting point or the new chapter, first 3 letters for somebody in the audience, what would you really hope for them to take away from this entire conversation today?
Oh wow, that's hard. Well, number one, choose your heart. Number two, be intentional. I would say where you focus. Again, it's not just about time; it's about the energy. Be intentional about where you focus your energy. And third is that you are not alone. There's a community. There's a reason Key exists. There's a reason we're doing this. There's a reason you have a network that you can tap into. Maximize that. There's no measure. So another thing, by the way, Anna, people ask me, it's like, why did you take a weekend job? Women in Tech is a nonprofit organization. Already they're busy. You have your personal life. Why do you decide to do that? Because there's no price to access. And what you have here, what everyone has here, is access to an amazing, brilliant community of ex-Meta people and sometimes ex-Googlers as well. Can you imagine how insane that is, that you have this kind of network? It's a very precious currency. And so don't be ashamed to use that, right? But at the same time, there's a grace. Again, me giving conflicting advice. There's a grace to there's an elegant way to reach out to people without sounding so needy. And also, if you don't want your caffeine intake, to exponentially rise because of this advice that we're giving you, that yeah, you should go out and have some coffee with people. Virtual meetings are fine. As a matter of fact, could be the preferred format of some people. And you can just be very nice and polite about it. Don't come from a place like, I want a job. People are very turned off by that. Like, come from a place where I'm really interested in understanding about this person and the organization that they work in. And that mindset change really reframes the way you approach that person in your network. So so one of my pet peeves, and I'm just going to say it out there, like, don't come ask me, what jobs do you have? I am not a job classifieds platform. I'm not going to tell you, do your homework. In the age of ChatGPT, there is just absolutely no excuse for people to still be asking me what my company does. Those tools are available for you to put yourself at a competitive advantage. So definitely use that, right? There are so many candidates in the market today. Like, why should they choose you? Be ready to articulate that. Again, scenario planning. What's your elevator pitch? In 11 words, how can you describe yourself? What's the skill set? And so while you're doing the research, really pushes you into a place of introspection as well. What am I good at? What are the skills that I can offer to the table? What's my niche? Very hard questions. Again, you are a growth stock. Why should people invest in you? And yeah, it's very easy for you to just position. I am very interested, for example, in what Third AI does or what Key does. Really love that event that you held on this date. I saw that you are doing this job. Wondering if you can book 15 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes just to tell me a bit more about your role in the company. Simple, nothing about asking for jobs, right? But then what you're doing is improving, bringing yourself into that person's radar, right? That, oh, then Anand would know that there's a Lianne that exists in the universe who's interested in my company and she's done X. So that's basically what it is. And that's why I would say access is just so priceless.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Lianne. I am saddened to bring this conversation, a truly insightful and honest conversation, to a close. Um, I appreciate you helping me and the people listening in. Um, through your incredible journey, the breadth and the depth of your various roles, your thought processes, the courage that you are bringing to the table on a daily basis, and your reflections of your identity and learning and leadership has been incredible to just be a fly on the wall at the very least. Um, What's really resonated for me is how you focus on leading with heart, thinking of yourself as a growth stock, as you've mentioned it multiple times. And I think I'm also going to steal from you the way that you express your career in the path of a company that's picking up an investment right from Series A to so on. Right, this is a fabulous uh, reflection in a way, right? And it also reminds us that our careers are not just a series of roles, but a journey of constant evolution. So perhaps the most important takeaway, even more, is the importance of the journey, the curiosity, the sense of a strong self beyond any title. Thank you once again, Lianne.
Well, and I know we have to close as well, right? So
Yeah.
I will offer an Easter egg for anyone who's listening. So a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure they're asking you, Anand, would you ever go back to Meta? To find out, subscribe and like our channel. DM us for our answers. Connect with us. But yeah, I'm not going to answer that today. People always ask me this question. So controversial. If you want to know the answer, go reach out to us and Key.